Hey there! Thank you for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris and welcome to Brick Breakdown. In this show, we will be taking a look at some of the canceled LEGO themes, artwork, sets, and parts, pretty much any idea that LEGO designers had put publicly on the web but never actually came to fruition in the market. Alright, so for today's topic of Brick Breakdown, we have LEGO Space Police 3. Introduced in 2009, Space Police ran for a couple of years and basically just reused the LEGO Futuron color scheme from years ago for vintage classic LEGO Space. Now, Space Police 3 had a ton of prototypes revealed both online and through the Brick Journal magazine, which did a full spread on many of the different minifigure and model prototypes, most of which were designed by the now famous LEGO designer Mark Stafford, who went on to design most of the Chima sets, some Ninjago stuff, and recently just put out the Daily Bugle for the Marvel Superheroes line. But going back to Space Police 3, this theme in particular had a ton of very fascinating different model concepts and different ideas for where the theme could go. In fact, we have some of the most prototype images for this theme out of any other theme out there, which makes this topic really exciting. But now, without further ado, myself and our guest star, LEGO David, will dive into some of the most fascinating LEGO Space Police 3 concept art, minifigures, and concept models. Okay, so first up here we have some of the alien minifigure concepts for Space Police 3. The designers actually stated that in an interview, they really wanted to focus on making the aliens distinct, especially after Mars mission, which just had identical aliens and a king. So out of all the aliens shown here, we actually only got 6 of them in the first wave, as you can see, and they're really interesting designs. Obviously, a lot of them have been altered from these original concept sketches, but for most of them, the general shape and variety of them is still there.
Okay, this is the interesting stuff. Which one is your favorite out of the ones we didn't get?
Oh man, that's a good question. To be honest, while I do love a lot of the more interesting and unique designs, I'm kind of a sucker for the classic space stuff. So that revamped Spyrius / UFO android is really cool. And I don't know if LEGO would have been able to pull it off like that in 2009, but if that were to come out today in, say, a collectible minifigure series, I certainly would be army building that. And honestly, I think they basically have the production capability to do something like that now. Really love that head design, but what about you?
I think the first one in the top, the one like with the one eye, I think that kind of looks like a classic Martian. I like that.
Oh yeah, that's another good one, and the thing I like about that is the tentacle arm. I think that that's a piece that LEGO could make today, but I don't know if they will, but it's still a pretty nice addition and really sets them apart from some of the other aliens.
I kind of wish we got all those aliens, honestly.
Actually,
yeah, I'm a sucker for new alien molds in original themes, so yeah, I really wish we got all the guys here. And even the kind of biker guy, I think, could have worked as just kind of like a guy that's strung together with the aliens and kind of show that in this universe, both aliens and the people can be criminals or part of the space police. It's not just the space police hunting down aliens or something.
It's actually a really good point. At first I was going to say that the biker guy was probably the least interesting out of them because it's just a standard minifigure that honestly could belong in some sort of LEGO City set, but I actually like your point because one of the complaints about the original Space Police line was that it was all humans hunting down aliens and none of the criminals were actually humans, so that would have solved that problem pretty easily.
That still looks like a good design for a minifigure. Like, that's not something like a typical, like, city thief. Like, looks really unique, actually. Like, it seems like it was gonna have, like, a new head mold with that kind of, like, biker head style.
Oh, for sure. He certainly is a lot more detailed than the normal crooks that we see in City. So, that definitely has something going for it. But from here, I guess we can now move on from the figure concepts to some of the set concepts, because there are a ton of them. Now, a lot of these set concepts are either recognizable sets, but there are a few of them, like the one that I'm about to show, that doesn't really correspond to any particular set, which, in my opinion, honestly, is kind of a shame, because I really like the look of this one.
This one kind of reminds me of Slave 1 with the kind of like up straight cockpit design. Yeah, that's quite unique for a spaceship.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite things about it, is that it has this very studs on the side type of building. It's pretty unique compared to many of the other ships we got, and it still is distinct from something like the Slave One in Star Wars while being its own thing. So this is really cool. Love the use of the Magna Guard cockpit as well. That's a pretty interesting piece used for the cockpit windscreen there, because we don't see that part too often anymore. So
this would have been a really cool thing to build, and honestly, I'm kind of tempted to build it myself. It's just a nice, smaller model.
Yeah, I think we can just build this one and just use it to fill out our Space Police world. I think this could have been a very good $10 set, and maybe also include an alien minifigure, and it could have been great.
Oh yeah, especially back in 2009, I could see this easily going for $10, $15 maybe, 20 at the most. It's a pretty small set, but it's a nice compact build and looks really good. I'm actually probably going to order the pieces to build this and add to my Space Police collection because I'm just a big fan of how it fits in with the rest of the other sets. But I guess with that, we can probably move on to the next build here. There's some more very interesting stuff on the way in terms of these set prototypes. Now, this one actually was transformed into part of the larger Space Police mothership. So they used a very similar building technique for something used in an existing set, but unfortunately, they kind of had to neuter it because it was used as part of an engine for the larger spacecraft. So it was a really cool feature how this could detach from the main spacecraft, but that also meant that it never was this detailed and you missed out on a lot of the really cool detail of it. And it also meant that this front part, which is a cool looking engine, was essentially just a Technic axle acceptor because that was how it connected to the main build.
I love all those greebly details. I think those look amazing. And I don't think we got any actual greebly sets in any of the Space Police sets, or even any sets around this time where you have like greebly details to present kind of like engine detailing or something.
Oh, for sure, and that is honestly a big shame. I mean, if you look at what this turned into, it still is a great parts usage of this whole airplane canopy part as the sides of an engine, but so much of the detail and energy of this build was kind of removed because it became a side build to a much larger vehicle, which I will say is a really cool parts usage. But unfortunately, that meant that this craft really didn't have any place to go. And it's a big shame because it does actually look like this went pretty far in development. You can actually see a concept poster for Space Police that actually had this fully edited, featured in the posters. So this went probably pretty far until they decided to actually enfold it into a larger set. So honestly, a little bit of a shame, and this is again another one that I really want to build myself, although unfortunately this is really the only image we have of it, so it might be a little bit harder to reverse engineer than say the other one, which was one, a lot less complex, and two, we actually had the back angles of it.
Yeah, I kind of wish they just packaged that set as its own set instead of packaging in with this Galactic Enforcer set.
Yeah, I'm definitely agreed with you there. As much as I love the Galactic Enforcer, I really would have loved this as its own standalone set. But then I guess we can move on to a very interesting concept build, because of course we never actually got a set that looked like this for the actual theme, but if you look very closely at this, it appears to be almost a direct revamp of a set that we actually got all the way back for Classic Space, right down to the color scheme and the wing technique.
Yeah, the original one looks really blocky and kind of bland, to be honest. This new one is a clear update.
Certainly, I find it just really interesting how they literally just took the base build of a Classic Space set and were planning on turning it into an actual modern set, at least back in 2009. I actually kind of wish that they did this more often because I really like that callback and almost an evolution to show where LEGO was at that time and what they could be today. But I guess they decided not to do that route, and they did some other stuff with their other spaceships, so we can probably now move on to the next prototypes we have up here. So moving on from that, we actually have a prototype for a small Space Police bike. Now we actually did get a Space Police bike. We actually got two different ones for these smaller sets of the waves, but the ones that we got were pretty different and didn't actually use this standard bike piece. So that's what we have right here.
Yeah, I think that looks really interesting. I think that could have been a fun, like, small set, like with an actual motorcycle piece, but then actually adding like sci-fi stuff on top of it.
Absolutely. I mean, the two small motorbikes that they did for Space Police 3 are some of my favorite sets of the entire line. They're just really fun to collect and play around with, so this would have been a welcome addition, although I do really love the ones we got. But of course, this is just kind of a small thing, so we can probably move on to something a little bit different. This is actually the prototype right here for one of these sets we actually got. And honestly, I think I kind of prefer the prototype over what we actually got.
Yeah, I think I prefer the prototype because of those rotor blades thing. Look really cool. Are those a new piece or something we got?
So those are wheel rims that were used in like the large Technic or Creator cars, but it's certainly a very unique piece usage to use it here. We did actually get those, but that actually gives me a lot of ideas to repurpose some of those as actual propellers or some sort of propulsion devices, which I think was used to really great effect here, and I don't know why they swapped it out for just the arguably less interesting standard engine builds of the actual set, unless maybe it was a budget thing and they just couldn't include those big pieces that do require large molds and whatnot in a set this small.
I will say though, the one we actually got is a lot more fleshed out. It has a lot more details. The prototype one looks a lot more bare bones, although the general design is more interesting.
For sure. I honestly would have been just happy if they took the propellers from the prototype one and just slapped them on the actual set and called it good, because I feel like that's kind of the perfect mix. It also does seem like this had the bank or safe grabbing feature. You see an open Technic axle connector in the back there, so definitely seems that they had the same function built in from the start. And the next image up here is just yet another stage in the set's development where I think they may have gone a little overboard on the weapons, but what do you think?
Yeah, this looks about kind of the same with what we got. I think, yeah, the one we actually got is better. This is clearly just another stage in the development of this set. But the fact that they use Mr. Krabs there, that's really, really funny.
Oh yeah, it's always entertaining to see which existing pieces LEGO uses to represent prototype molds and whatnot, so I guess they just grabbed the most alien looking thing they had on hand. But then we can probably move on from this particular set prototype and take a look at some of the other ones that are featured in this list. So next up here we have the Container Heist Set. Now this looks like a much beefier and larger version of what we got, featuring an extra set of engines and a much larger and more detailed cargo container, which honestly I think looks really good, but definitely out of budget for what the set was supposed to be. Here's a picture of them compared next to each other if you want to kind of see the details and how it changed from the prototype to the original set.
Yeah, I think I prefer the prototype one. It's a lot more bigger, and I would actually kind of want to make a mock of that, to be honest, now.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, I think it speaks to just how good some of these prototypes are that almost every single image is inspiring me to build something of my own out of it.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, this one does look better than the actual set, but I understand why they downscaled it to make it more affordable.
Oh yeah, it definitely makes sense why this would be downscaled. The one thing though is I really wish they kept at least some of the detail on that excellent looking cargo container on the back of the original prototype. I understand if you can't do that much detail for an official set, but it looks really good and the building techniques used are actually really sophisticated compared to essentially what we got was just a selection of different panels stacked together. But I guess if you gotta downscale it for an actual set, it would make sense, although this would be a fantastic mock. But from here we can probably move on to the next set. Now this prototype is very, very similar to the one we actually got. This was another villain-styled vehicle for the Hyperspeed Pursuit set.
The only difference is that the set actually has different style wings. The set one actually uses the bionicle wings from Mystika.
Oh yeah, that's a good observation, and it almost looks like they included those specific Technic-based wing elements to accommodate the spring-loaded launchers or the competition cannons on the front for the actual set, whereas if we go back to the prototype here, it didn't have any of those launchers, so they probably just felt it was fine to use the standard wings. But hey, I'm all for using bionicle pieces in standard sets where it fits, and I think this is a pretty good example of it. And actually, speaking of those Mystika Wings, one of the most interesting things about these prototypes was that there was another image released around this time featuring the Mystika Wings in white, where a lot of people were immediately commenting that at the time that that prototype image was released, those pieces had not actually ever appeared in white. So for whatever reason, it was planned to appear in white for Bionicle, but they scrapped it, and we never actually got those pieces in white until years later, around 2014, for a city set of all things. So kind of interesting to see how different things were introduced in different colors, but never actually were included in sets until much later. Now this right here is just one of the many prototype images released of the Raid Viper set. The designer Mark Stafford actually stated that this was his preferred form of the set and would have wanted it to look like this, but unfortunately, due to budget constraints, the set was only a $10 set. LEGO asked him to scale it down a lot more than this, which eventually resulted in the final set, which I think is still a pretty nice small-sized vehicle, but I think the angled wings here are definitely a lot cooler. But let's go back to the Hyperspeed Pursuit set, where we actually have a few different variations of the cop car. What do you think of this one?
The engines actually look the same, the engines, kind of the same technique used for the engines.
Yeah, you can clearly see where this was sort of going in the direction, but honestly, I think the set version is definitely a lot better. I'm actually a big fan of the shaping on how the set turned out.
Yeah, the set one is better.
Yeah, the only thing that I really wish that they did was the printing or stickers on the cockpit on the prototype here. I think it really does enhance the look of the set with the white stripes on the side and whatnot.
That actually adds a lot, in my opinion. I think they should have used that in the actual set.
Yeah, I'm guessing if anything, it was probably some sort of a sticker issue or a printing issue where they couldn't get it to turn out just like that, so I can see why they didn't, but it still would have been nice. And speaking of a pretty interesting alternate color scheme, we actually have the villain vehicle, which I guess at some point was imagined as a cop car, reimagined in a completely different color scheme for the Space Police. I actually kind of like this because it evokes a classic cop car or maybe some more realistic colors, but I don't really know. I'm a little torn because I also love the fact that they just reused the Futron color scheme. But what do you think of this color scheme in particular and this look for the Space Police faction in general?
The one we actually got is a better color schema. The white and trans blue looks a lot better. This one is kind of interesting, but it's not really a color scheme I would have wanted to see in the entire wave.
I can understand that, yeah. It definitely is something that feels a little more realistic to me, but again, really a sucker for that Futron color scheme of white, black, and transparent blue. So I am very, very happy with what we got personally.
Yeah.
But with that, I think it's a good time to move on to the next prototype we have up here. It's a prototype for the Max Security Transport. You can see the core idea for the vehicle basically stayed the same, but there were a few different color choices and building choices for at least the way that this thing is constructed that set it apart from the final set. What do you think of this?
Yeah, the set one is better. The wheels I don't think look very good in a prototype. I think the wheel piece choice for the set actually works better.
I can definitely see where you're coming from. I think the wheels on the prototype are just a little bit too big, and the set, it's just about right. That being said though, honestly, I think I prefer the cockpit of the prototype compared to the actual set. I really like the rounded, more tank-like look, whereas if you look at the cockpit of the actual set, it just kind of looks like the front of a standard spaceship, so I do like the way that it was a little bit different in the prototype here, but besides from that, it seems like most everything else is basically just the same, right down to the same exact function and everything. Well, with that, we can probably move on to another prototype of the Raid Viper / Hyperspeed Pursuit. Wasn't really sure exactly which one this was supposed to be a prototype of, but you can see this prototype right here. Pretty interesting kind of color scheme they've got going on with the non-transparent blue windscreen, but I'm guessing that might have just been because the piece wasn't in production at that time. What do you think of this and how it compares to the final set?
Yeah, I kind of like the guns on the prototype one better than the one in the set.
Yeah, I actually think it might actually be the lack of green tips on the lasers here that make them look a little bit more realistic, at least for the space combatants right here. But man, honestly, just looking at all these prototypes is really just making me miss original LEGO space themes as a whole. I really feel like that's a sector that's been missing a lot from LEGO's recent portfolio. I mean, the last original space theme we got was all the way back with Galaxy Squad in 2013.
I would do anything to get another space team in general. Anything space.
Oh yeah, you can say that one again. But I guess with that we can move on to one of the largest prototypes shown off. This was a prototype for the Space Police Station, most notable of which it features the LEGO Pirates Sand Island base in the light gray color, which means it's more like a crater base. It would have been a modern crater base, and unfortunately we never actually got the part in light gray, and it only appeared in that one Pirate Island set in tan.
Yeah, maybe somewhere out there those pieces still exist.
Oh man, those would be really great to use in space mocks. But I guess looking at this as a whole, and especially comparing it against what we got, it's honestly really hard for me to decide which is better, because on the one hand with this, you've got those amazing light gray crater base plates, but I'm also not really sure what that whole control tower is. I love the different angles of the windscreen, so I'm not sure what that's supposed to represent, or also how sturdy that would have been as a final model. And if you go onto the right side of the base, it seems fairly simple with just the windscreen stacked on top, so not really sure if I like it more or less than what we actually got, because the final Space Police Station that we did get, in my opinion, is quite fantastic. It has a full garage with a vehicle going out. I love the command center with the reuse of the Paradisa windscreens. So both of these concepts, honestly, are quite good to me, and it's hard for me to pick between the two. But what do you think of this?
Yeah, I like that kind of control tower design there, but I still think the one in the set is still good enough. I still think the control tower in the set actually I prefer it better than the prototype one. But yeah, I would have loved to get those prefab base plates in gray.
Oh yeah, for sure. They both definitely have their pros and cons. But with that, we can probably move on to our next prototype. Now, this next one here actually never was made into an official set. At first, I wasn't sure if it was just a mock by the designer Mark Stafford or it actually was supposed to be a set because he just posted it on his Flickr page as if it was a mock. And then during some sort of LEGO convention, they showed it off as prototype artwork and models from the designer's workshop in Denmark. So I guess technically this was some sort of a prototype for Space Police, so it's fair game to discuss today.
That kind of reminds me of that set from Mars Mission, the Walker from Mars Mission.
It's actually funny you say that because Mark Stafford also designed that set. I think it was the MT-201 Ultra Drill Walker, so I can definitely see the similar influence in design from that set to this model. Now this is actually pretty interesting to me. I kind of wish that we got it, although I can understand that maybe some folks at LEGO felt like it was too similar to that one Mars Mission set, so they chose not to produce it, but it would have been interesting to see some sort of a walker for Space Police, especially because we never actually got one for the entire Space Police 3 lineup. So I think it's a cool concept for a set, but I'm not too torn up about missing it, especially compared to some other prototype models that we discussed that I really wish were made.
Yeah, I kind of wish we got this set as well.
Oh, I can say that for almost all of these on this list, for sure. With that, though, we can move on to just one more prototype here. It's very similar. It's just the prototype of 5982 Smash and Grab. Basically just the vehicle we got with a different color scheme and a slightly different / more thought out bank or ATM, which was a pretty fun concept to have it stuck in an asteroid. But besides that, I have kind of saved the best for last here because there was a concept poster for Space Police that was revealed, and it features this amazing transforming mothership right here.
Why didn't we get that? Wait, Space Police originally was supposed to be called Galaxy Patrol?
Well, that's actually pretty funny. Apparently it was. I guess LEGO just decided to reuse the Galaxy part of the name for Galaxy Squad a few years later. But man, if you look at this I'm guessing is a prototype for the Mission Commander or the large Galactic Enforcer spacecraft from Space Police 3, and I'm gonna be honest, as much as I love that set, I think this one's a little bit better. And if you look down here, it even transforms into a full-on base.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I kind of wish we got this one instead of the Galactic Enforcer we actually got, but the one we got was still good. This one was a lot more detailed, I see, and a lot bigger, so it would have been even more expensive than the actual Galactic Enforcer.
Oh, for sure, and I'm guessing that's part of the reason why this prototype was scrapped is because it was just so big. I mean, the Galactic Enforcer was $100 back in 2009, which adjusting for inflation is probably around $122 today, which means that this, if I'm just looking at it right now, would probably have been closer to $150, and then you start getting really way up there in price. So I can understand if LEGO didn't want to do something this big for just a standard action and adventure theme, but man, if I was better at mocking, I would just immediately put this together because this looks fantastic. I really love the way that the prison pods are held on this too. It looks like they're held in the front two prongs of the spacecraft here, which is a really cool looking vehicle and also a great play feature for aliens to try to break them out right at the front of the spaceship. So this is very cool. The other really interesting thing about this is that it reuses, if you look closely at that cockpit, it just reuses the Slave 1 cockpit piece, but paints most of it white and just has a little sliver of it open for the transparent part to peek through. I don't know if that would have been feasible whatsoever in an actual LEGO set, but it certainly looks really cool. And if you look at the actual set, we did get that whole cockpit in transparent blue, but of course it did not have this white covering. It just was in the plain transparent blue, which makes me guess that LEGO probably wasn't able to reliably print on basically all angles of it. But it's still a really interesting thing to see, and I really wish again that we got this as the final set.
At least I wish we got those designs for those kind of jail cells. I wish we got those at the very least.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the jail cells we got definitely are good for the play feature aspect, but these just definitely feel a lot more complete and really do feel like actual jail cells rather than the cells that we got that would spring open when you whack them, which of course good for play, but definitely doesn't really add to the aesthetics too much. But besides one last concept sketch featuring basically what we've seen throughout this video, as well as some different designs for the space policemen themselves, that about wraps up this very interesting look at some of the many Space Police prototypes.
Yeah, the Space Police stuff was really fascinating.
Absolutely, and now I'm itching to build some of these prototype models myself. The one thing I love about looking at fully detailed concept art showcases like this is that you really can see the amount of effort, design, and planning that goes into just a single LEGO theme. And this is one of the most comprehensive and best examples, taking a look at everything from minifigure and character design to actual set prototypes and even stuff that never came to be. Alright, and that sums up this brick breakdown of the LEGO Space Police 3 prototypes. Let me know down in the comments below, which did you like, or would you have liked some even more than the official sets themselves? I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to stay tuned to DuckBricks for even more LEGO brick breakdown prototype videos, as well as just general LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks so much, and bye bye for now.